in the 1936 presidential election, this is actual history here, the Literary Digest magazine polled 10 million people. That was 1/4 of the country at that time. The country was 40 million. And was completely wrong in its prediction of the election. It was Alfred Landon against Franklin Delano Roosevelt that year. And so the Republican was Alfred Landon. He was running for president. And the Democrat was FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. You know who won, you know Franklin. Well, the magazine predicted Landon would win. And George Gallup, you recognize Gallup poll, right? This is when George Gallup first got famous. George Gallup predicted FDR would win, and he was right. FDR won that election. And the trick is, the interesting part about polling is the magazine asked 10 million people. That's a ton. And George Gallup only polled 50,000. That might sound like a lot, but it's way, way less than 10 million. It's like, I don't know, what is it? 1/20th? I think it's like 1/200th. So the Literary Digest magazine polled 200 times as many people. So why did the different results? What happened? Well, the Literary Digest magazine, let me put it over here. The magazine, they sent out postcards in the mail asking people what they're going to vote. So right off the bat, they had a problem with voluntary response, right? We've talked about that earlier. If you only ask people, you're only getting the extreme views. Only a strong opinion is going to take the time to mail back some postcard. Whereas George Gallup, he sent out pollsters to interview people directly, like on the street. They would go up and talk to them. So you're not gonna get most people not answering. Whereas with the postcard, I think only I don't know what the percentage was, but a very low percentage of people bothered to mail back in the postcard. So you're getting a bunch of non-response bias. It's also called non-response bias or voluntary response bias. Either phrase is right. Only strong opinions are going to bother to send it back in. Not only that, so that's number one problem. Number two, they asked people who owned cars and oops, a little trouble there. Owned cars and professional organizations like plumbers unions and professionals. Now, why is that a problem? Well, remember 1936? That was the middle of the Great Depression. I think 1/4 of the nation was out of work, 25% unemployment. People were not mostly employed. So when the magazine asked car owners and professionals, they're asking the wealthier people. Only the wealthier people at that time owned cars and had good professional jobs. So they were only getting the opinions of the wealthier people, and the wealthier people were gonna vote for Alfred Landon, the Republican candidate. So that's why their poll went astray. Whereas George Gallup, he knew better. Now I'm getting to the answer. The answer to this question is stratified sampling. That's what George Gallup did. He did stratified sampling. What does that mean? He took the United States of America at that time, 40 million people, and he broke it into little groups. Say it was, I don't know, I'm going to just guess here, 52% women and 48% men. I have no idea. Say it was 39%, let's say, Hispanic. And it was, I don't know, 27% Asian. And on you go, and maybe 25%, as I said, 25% were unemployed. And maybe 42% lived on farms. And 58% lived in the city, etc. I'm just making these numbers up, but here's what George Gallup did. He said, his poll had the same percentage as the whole nation. Are you tracking with me? George Gallup made sure, here's the key, that his poll had the same percentage of the various groups as the whole nation had. This is called stratified sampling. He looked at the whole nation and said it's 52% women, 48% men. So when I do my little poll of only 50,000, I'll make sure 52% of the people I talk to are women and 48% are men, and 39% of the whole nation is Hispanic. So I'll make sure 39% of my poll is Hispanic, and 25% of the whole nation is unemployed. So I'll make sure 25% of my poll, the people I ask, the 50,000 people I ask their opinion on who they're going to vote for, I'll make sure 25% of them are unemployed people, and 42% of the nation live on farms. I'll make sure 42% of my poll is people who live on farms, etc. He made his poll a little bitty picture of the United States of America with the same percentages of the important divisions among people, rich and poor, unemployed and employed, living in the country, living in the city, men, women, the various racial groups. He made the percentages in his sample match the percentages in the nation so that his poll was like a little bitty United States. That's called stratified sampling. You break it into various strata. These are called strata, like percentages of various groups. These are, substrata of the overall population. That's called stratified sampling. That was genius on his part. And it enabled him to figure out with only 50,000 exactly what the United States was going to do on Election Day. He was able to predict it correctly, and he went on to become famous. The Literary Digest magazine actually collapsed within a month. They were the biggest magazine in the nation, and they collapsed after that because they were so embarrassed and nobody believed them anymore. They had lost all credibility because they predicted the election, a major presidential election, wrong. So nobody believed they knew anything after that, and nobody bought their magazines after that. And Gallup went on to become famous, and it's the method still being used today as the modern polling method. They use stratified sampling. That's the modern scientific polling method. They make their poll a little bitty United States with all the same percentages so that they get to the truth of what people are really gonna do. George Gallup had a famous saying. He said, it's like soup. If you stir the soup well, one small spoonful is all you need to tell you what the whole pot of soup tastes like. You get it? He stirred the whole nation and made sure his little poll was a little bitty exact replica of the United States. So when he asked his little poll who they were going to vote for, he knew who the whole United States was going to vote for. You stir the soup well, he said. If you stir the soup well, you only need one small spoonful to know what the whole pot of soup tastes like. That's called stratified sampling.